We just wanted to see what did it look like to go down a rabbit hole. What would franchising look like if we went down and to see what it all had to offer? And when we first started, obviously you're doing everything. You need to be the expert on everything you possibly can. You're the one that's making the first and initial mistakes. They select, hopefully, franchisees that have grit and are going to go and get it. We opened up our second location within 6 months, and right after our second location, I then quit my full-time job at General Mills and went full-time franchising. 100+ hour weeks, just trying to get things up, and going through the grind. And there's no way these stores would have opened without my wife Kylie. She's my rock, and she is certainly the reason that we even have a franchise.
What's up, guys? We got Garret Steed here from Crumbl Cookies. Why don't you give us a 2-minute bio about yourself?
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure first, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
So I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. Went to college at Utah State University. And that's how I was first introduced to Crumbl. Was the very first Crumbl location. My wife and I were some of the very first customers to go. And so that location unfortunately no longer exists, but we went to support Crumbl as they were a brand new business, and we went to go and try their cookies, and they were fantastic, and we were instantly hooked. And after I graduated from Utah State, I worked for General Mills, working in sales on brands like Cheerios, Lucky Charms, Pillsbury, Betty Crocker, and had a ton of fun. And then as I was on those, as I worked on those brands, I learned a ton from, I believe, some of the smartest minds in the business. Some great people. I learned a ton from them. So during my time with General Mills, I feel like it really helped build out my business acumen. And then about a year or so into my role at General Mills, I thought about wanting to do something that was perhaps a side hustle. And so I looked at a lot of different options, a lot of different things, and looked into franchising.
Okay.
And Crumbl had just started to gain some real traction. We made our first phone call in January or February of 2020. One of the big things for us is we just wanted to see what did it look like to go down a rabbit hole. What would franchising look like if we went down and to see what it all had to offer? And so we just started. I think we more made the phone call to Crumbl not expecting to come out with 5 stores in the span of
5 years.
Yeah. As we started down that journey and started making those phone calls, and more phone calls happened, and then we ended up signing with Crumbl at the end of 2020. So COVID hit, went through the summer, and had some great experiences there, and through talking with great people over at Crumbl Corporate, and then led us to then go ahead and sign for what's called an ADA, or an Area Development Agreement, for the Tampa Bay area.
Wow. Wow, that is really cool. Would you graduate from College of Utah? Like, what degree did you have?
Yes, I studied communication studies and marketing.
Okay. And so, how did you feel like that degree helped you out a lot with the Crumbl Cookies industry? Yeah,
I think so. I think for undergrad, I find that communication studies more focuses on persuasion, navigating through conflict, and conflict resolution, public speaking, and I feel like a lot of my job now has more to do with that than even sometimes the marketing side. But I did go, after undergrad, I did go get a master's degree at the University of Florida.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
And
go Gators.
Yeah, go Gators. I got an MBA from them, and that was actually right in the middle while I was also opening our Crumbles. It was right before I started opening our Crumbles.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
I was still working for General Mills. I started the MBA in August of 2021. Our first store didn't open until October of 2021, even though the process had started in 2020. We opened up our second location within 6 months, and right after our second location, I then quit my full-time job at General Mills and went full-time franchising. And then I graduated with my MBA not too long ago in the spring of 2023.
Wow.
So it was a busy time.
Yeah.
Busy time.
So tell me, what is now that you've you've had 5 locations, and you're probably more on like the sales, marketing, like tell me like what your day-to-day is, having 5 locations now, 5 years later.
Yeah, when we first started, obviously you're doing everything. You need to be the expert on everything you possibly can. You're the one that's making the first and initial mistakes.
Yep.
And learning as you go. There's no instruction book for how to start a business. Even in the franchising world, the franchise does a fantastic job giving you a lot of things, but part of it is they select, hopefully, franchisees that have grit and are going to go and get it and try to figure things out and learn and grow with the franchise. And I think that's what we certainly tried to do.
Yeah.
Because we learned a lot in those first few months to years of just in the grind. So we were in the stores baking cookies, making mistakes, trying to understand what the right levers were. I mean, we had very limited experience when it came even to food. We had some, but not a ton. I never had baked cookies in my life. I have three daughters and a son, and my daughters, at the time we didn't have our boy wasn't born yet, but my daughters had certainly baked more cookies than I had.
Oh my goodness.
And so we learned a lot. We made tons of mistakes, and then now my job looks a little bit different, and I gotta attribute it to our fantastic leadership team. We have a phenomenal management team. So my day-to-day looks a lot different than it did a few years ago. Now, so for example, yesterday we took all of our general managers out to lunch to review just the year, and to also to talk about top of mind things that we have for our franchise, as well as where we see Crumbl going in the future. And so talking with our managers, training our managers, and part of it was, for example, yesterday, we did a whole training that was focused on conflict resolution. Our managers are the ones that are in the weeds constantly, that are working with their employees, and sometimes there's conflict that can happen, particularly when you're in a tight space of anywhere between 1,200 to 1,600 square feet. That's a tight space for employees to be working in, and so it's just being able to help them identify and recognize ways that they can help mitigate some of that conflict. I have to attribute a lot of what has helped me with learning about conflict resolution to my major at Utah State with communication studies. Professor, shout out to Claire Canfield. And some of the principles that we learned there is Claire actually has a TED Talk on conflict and conflict resolution. And I was his TA for a number of years, and so we implement a lot of those principles with our general managers. I would find a lot of my day-to-day does involve implementing a lot of things I learned from my master's degree. Strategizing for the business. What things do we need to do differently? What levers do we need to pull? How are we understanding our P&L? And making implementations. There's really 3 principles as we think about running our business, and this impacts my day-to-day. We call them the 3 Ps. So first is focusing on our people. Where are our gaps? Where are our opportunities? What are the things that are working really well for us? What things do we need to implement or change or train on? And focusing on ensuring that we have the right people in the right seats. I think one of the best books to ensure that we have the right people is Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yep.
And that book has really had an impact on our franchise as far as the way that we think about who's in the right seat and getting the wrong people out of the wrong seats or off the bus completely, if that makes sense, and helping them onto their next endeavor and not wasting their life, I think, as Jim Collins says.
Yeah.
But we think we have a terrific team. They are the soul of our franchise. So people, and then next is process. We've spent hundreds, probably thousands of hours working on our processes. So it helps within the overall culture of your store. If there's a good process, then you know that your employees are going to work well. And work well together, as well as it's going to impact the P&L and the bottom line ultimately. Sure. What does our waste look like? What's our process there? What happens when our employees come in first thing in the morning? What does that process look like? What does accountability look like within not only our general managers, but our entire leadership team across the board, our assistant managers, shift leads, and accountability. How does that look? What does our employee handbook look like? How are we protecting our employees and the safety of our employees? So there's processes that we have in place that are very specific that day one our bakers understand in training. Again, people, process, and then understanding your profit. So understanding the bottom line, how is that impacting the overall business? Whenever we take a particular action or process, or we have certain people in place that can understand the P&L, is going to have significant impact on your bottom line. And so ensuring that we understand how our profit is being driven, understanding where our opportunities are, what levers are going to impact our efficiency, or our staying and remaining more lean, or our operational excellence is certainly going to impact it.
Yeah. We're going to have a little match. We're going to be playing 9 holes. So I'm going to let him start 7 under, and then we're going to see if this is...
I'll need more than that.
We'll see. I might not play that great today. It's a little cold out. I'm not used to wearing, pants, so we'll see. All right, Garrett. So one of the questions that my good friend Sam asked me was, why did you choose Crumbl Cookie? Is there something about their franchise model that attracted you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sam. For us, one of the big things that we were looking for in franchising is the concept simple. We didn't want something that was overcomplicated. I think far too often a lot of companies, they get excited about their menu, and so they continue to add on, and they want to bring in more customers, and so they continue to expand. And I think that there's a lot of positive things to that, but I think then when you overcomplicate your menu, I don't know about you, whenever I walk into a restaurant, I think it's easy to get a little overwhelmed at times when you walk in and the menu is 5 pages long.
Yeah.
And so we liked the idea of having a concept or partnering with a concept that was really simple. And Crumbl was that. At the time, there was 6 flavors, rotating menu, 150 plus flavors that they were still innovating. I think now we have somewhere in the ballpark of 250, 300 flavors that have come and gone. Every single week, Crumbl's menu changes. What's fun too is Crumbl's actually changed their branding and their name, and that was one of the reasons that we also chose Crumbl's. We knew that they weren't married to their product, that they were married to the consumer, if you will, and that they would stay and they would listen to the consumer as to what it is that the consumer wanted. And cookies is still strong. It still is a fantastic market. But what's great is as Crumbl's rebranded, we've entered more into just the desserts and baked dessert space. And that's had significant impact on the excitement. As soon as we've introduced minis as a full-time offering rather than just a catering offering, and that's been really, really great for our customers. And then also just we have, from tres leches cake to cinnamon squares to chocolate cake to just lots of different spaces that now we can enter into on the baked goods side. And I think that's really smart of Crumbl because it goes more depth rather than breadth. And I think that's where a lot of companies lose the excitement from the customer, or even just to create some confusion for the customer, is they start to go breadth. They start becoming a one-stop shop for everything, rather than really finding their niche. Yeah, and finding the place that they play best in. And Crumbl at one point they offered ice cream. That's breadth, not depth. We're a baked goods company, not an ice cream company. And ice cream was on the menu for maybe a year. Maybe that's longer than what it actually was, but we had them in half pint sizes, 6 flavors as well, and then we went away from that. And I think that was really smart of Crumbl. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't crazy sales. It wasn't on brand. So Crumbl's actually dropped cookies from the name and has put more baked items and baked goods to their menu and into that rotating menu, along with still cookies as part of that baked good offering. But that was one of the big reasons we chose them. Again, is simplicity, and we knew that they were going to follow the consumer and listen to the consumer. And we all know anything about marketing. That's the number one thing. That's the life of the business.
What do you see for long-term growth when it comes to Crumbl?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Do you guys have a pretty big vision board for it?
Yeah, I think Crumble's headed in a terrific direction. I think that I think the key and the name of the game is just continuing to innovate. And I think that Crumbl's done a fantastic job with their R&D team. As the perspective as a franchisee, I won't speak on behalf of Crumbl Corporate, but as a franchisee, we're seeing great impacts in overall sales, just because of their R&D and their innovation.
All right, so we kind of already talked about how you make your money, but let's talk about how do you invest your money? How do you invest back into the business, or into your personal life, or into the future?
Yeah, a lot of our money is invested back into Crumbl, as you mentioned, back into our franchise. As we built out our 5 locations, from open to open, our first to our 5th in just over 2 years.
Yeah.
And so, taking some of that capital to reinvest it. As far as my additional investments or what that looks like, we're shopping for other franchises. We're looking at lots of different franchises. I would love to have several brands that we're working with. Crumbl's been a fantastic partner, and we'd love to take a lot of the things that we've learned from Crumbl and implement them into being a franchisee in other places. And there's a couple of concepts that we've looked at and that we're really excited about. The other side of that too is taking investment onto some of the other aspects of franchising, and part of that is the build out and construction part of that. So I've looked into partnering with a few other people to start even just a construction or contracting business as well. More on the development side, trying other avenues to see how we can reduce our own costs, to see if we can do some of the things at cost. So looking also at the building side of things.
People are looking at, let's say they want to be a business owner, franchise owner. Tell me what benefits you have received as being a franchise owner as opposed to what you see as someone that's a business owner. I know they're very similar, but
yeah, no, there's a difference.
Walk us through what makes, in your opinion, being a franchise owner a little bit better than being a business owner.
I don't even know if it's better. It's just, I think diversification.
Better for you, sorry.
Yeah. For us, it's worked out really well. I think for us, being a franchise owner, it's great because there's data we can look at. For example, for you and your landscaping company, this is something that you're building out, right? You can look at other landscaping companies as a model to use, and that's kind of what franchising is. Mm-hmm. Is that we get to not only look at the model, we get to use the model.
Yep.
Right? It's we get to look at, also we get to see real data when it comes to numbers, right? What are these stores doing in revenue? What are they doing in profit?
Yep.
That's within typically your FDD or your franchise disclosure document that they give to you. Is they're going to give you the financials of the stores that were open within that full taxable year. So you get to see a really good, outlook and perspective as to how other stores doing that have been open. And so it allows us to make a decision as franchisees to say, I'm going to pull the trigger on this or not.
So do you feel like also you guys have the systems and processes in place, you're not having to figure out the systems and processes, which kind of helps, make the process of getting more locations?
Yeah, I would say there's different systems that are already part of Crumbl Corporate, which certainly helps, right? Like the recipes, we don't create our own recipes, right? So that's already made for us. So that and Crumbl's technology that they've invested in, we didn't build that. Crumbl Corporate did that. I would say there's a lot more as far as the processes when it comes to what's happening inside the kitchen. I think that there's become more recommendations that Crumbl has come out with, but a lot of that came from franchisees, right? We're building those out. And Crumbl at the time was in much of its infancy when we joined.
That's right.
I think a lot of those are probably more shared with maybe newer franchisees. But the other benefit to us as franchisees is I can go to another franchise owner and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Help me with this. So being able to have that network of other franchisees in your corner and in your circle is really helpful, because you can bounce off ideas off each other and hopefully help each other in different aspects that maybe you're struggling with that otherwise a new business.
So do you feel like the Crumbl does a really good job of kind of giving you guys some more freedom when it comes to the systems and processes and like how you're managing and who you're hiring and stuff?
Certainly, that I would say that falls in the responsibility of the franchise owner.
Okay.
Is they put that onto us, and rightfully so. Is that's part of the franchise model. Is hopefully they're choosing franchisees that have the capacity and have the expertise to be able to go out and find the right people, hiring to ensure that their processes are right. I mean, I think they certainly can give guidance, but a lot of that falls to the franchisee.
Yeah. So one of the last questions that we usually ask people is, how do you give back to charity?
From a Crumbl perspective, what we do is we actually have very limited waste when it comes to our cookies and our specialty baked goods. And what we do with those is we have anything that's left over. And when I say waste, anything that's thrown out or thrown away, I should explain. What we do with the cookies and the desserts that are left over is we partner with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, Good Neighbors, the local fire stations, and we take those cookies, we put them into bins, and we donate them.
Okay.
To them. So even I think we donated last year across our franchise. I think a conservative number, it's I think 250,000 cookies is what we donate to the community.
Jeez.
So we donate a lot with that respect. So what's great about Good Neighbors is Good Neighbors takes our product and they donate it out to other nonprofit or 501c3 organizations and help share the cookie love. And then personally, as well as between my wife and I, we donate the full tithe or 10% of our income to our church, which goes to helping humanitarian projects, to building more churches. And so that's something that's really important for us, as well as we donate a little bit more to that goes specifically to the needs of the local congregations of the church that we attend.
Yeah, sweet. So another question I have for you is, how has your relationship with your wife impacted your success in business? And yeah, just like explain that to us.
Yeah, she should probably be in the cart with you. She's the reason that this business is even here. As I mentioned before, I started my career with General Mills, and she has a degree from Utah State as well, actually in English literature, and she was a ghostwriter for a financial company out of college, but we had already started our family, and so her primary responsibility and job was being at home with our first daughter Charlotte and our second daughter Grace, and then when about 10 days before we moved to Florida, our daughter Ruby was born.
Wow.
And so she's an amazing mom, but even for us to get our stores up and running, she knows just as much, if not arguably more, about Crumbl than I do. She helped ensure that our first store was open. So I think about some of the challenges that we had. If you go back again, we talked about that I was getting my master's degree. I was working full-time for a Fortune 200 company. We were raising 3 daughters. We're very involved in our church. It was a busy time for us. And so there's no way these stores would have opened without my wife, Kylie.
Yeah.
She was an integral part. So we'd wake up at like 4 a.m. I'd start studying for school. She would go into the store, be there by 5 a.m. Again, our first store was in Clearwater, so we had a bit of a commute to get out there from Tampa. And so she would open up the store. Our general manager would come in at 9 or 10. During that time, I'd get our kids up, get them ready for the day, and then start work from home. And she'd come home, take over looking after and raising our girls. And I would be working, and then at my lunch hour, I'd start working on our second store, and I'd go back to work in the grind until 5. I'd then hop in my car and drive over to Clearwater and relieve the general manager from her shift, and then close, get home by midnight or 1 a.m., and then wake back up at 4 a.m. the next morning. And we did that for a long time.
Really?
And
that's the grit you were talking about before.
Yeah. And that was, I look at that, and we between the two of us, we probably spent 100+ hour weeks, so 200 hours between the two of us, just trying to get things up and running and going through the grind. And she was the pivotal piece to it. I mean, we wouldn't have got our stores open. And then even when our second store opened, I still didn't quit my full-time job until 6 weeks after that store opened. So she was the original general manager of that second store to help make sure that it got up and running. And then now she spends about 15 minutes a week is all on Crumbl, and she put in her time and effort. So, you know, she deserves a chance to just kind of be able to take a step back. 15 minutes is she spends with the managers, reviewing their schedules. She goes through their schedules, ensures that their labor percentage is where we need it to be, and ensures that their labor budget is accurate. So, but yeah, she's my rock, and she is certainly the reason that we even have a franchise.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Garret, for coming on the channel. I really appreciate your time. We definitely both didn't have great golf, but I'm sure we were pretty close. I'm not even sure what the score was at the very end. But hopefully we can talk more soon, and maybe do like a little sit down kind of conversation on Tee Talk or something, and in the future to kind of get some more questions out of you. But do you have any final thoughts?
No, it was great to be on the show. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
today,
of course.
I appreciate it. This was awesome, and definitely we all know who won this game, but it was it was a ton of fun. Good company. So thank you.
There you go. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Seth. Appreciate
yes, sir.